Good morning, everyone, and we are starting with the today's topic. And topic for today is inguinal hernia. Okay, the topic is inguinal hernia. Now, before we proceed to this topic, we have to understand that inside the inguinal canal, there are mechanisms. There are mechanisms for prevention of hernia. Okay, mechanisms for prevention of this hernia. And the first mechanism is the obliquity of the canal itself. Okay, the obliquity of the canal. The canal is not straight, but the canal is oblique. So for an oblique uh, canal, it's very difficult that herniation will take place. Okay, so that's obliquity of the canal is the first factor. Then there is the conjoint tendon, which is kind of guarding the superficial inguinal ring. Okay, so the conjoint tendon, okay, which guards the superficial ring, which guards the superficial ring. Now comes some mechanism. Now, similarly, the deep ring is also guarded by the internal oblique. So conjoint tendon guards the superficial ring, and the internal oblique muscle guards the deep ring. Okay. Now we start with the mechanism. And most important mechanism is shutter mechanism. Shutter mechanism. Now, what is this shutter mechanism? Shutter mechanism is, the internal oblique we had drawn that day, how it goes in the anterior wall of the canal, it lies in the roof of the canal, and along with transversus abdominis, it forms conjoint tendon and is there in the posterior wall also. So internal oblique muscle is there in the anterior wall. It is there in the roof in form of conjoint tendon. It is there in the posterior wall. So whenever the internal oblique muscle contracts, it approximates the anterior wall. It approximates with the posterior wall and the roof. And this is the shutter mechanism of internal oblique. The shutter mechanism of internal oblique. Then next is the ball wall mechanism. Next is the ball wall mechanism. This ball wall mechanism is by cremaster. Cremaster muscle. What the cremaster muscle does is, like, this is the canal, and then there is this cord, and then there is lower down here is the testis. So the cremaster muscle pulls all of this content, the spermatic cord, upwards. And then because when it contracts, it pulls the spermatic cord upward. All of these contents come and clog. These contents of the spermatic cord clog the superficial ring. Clog the superficial ring. And that's the mechanism which is called as ball wall mechanism of cremaster. Whenever cremaster contracts, it pulls up the contents of the spermatic cord and clogs the superficial. Then there is the slit wall mechanism. The slit wall mechanism is the external oblique muscle is like this, and in the external oblique is superficial ring. So whenever the external oblique contracts, this slit reduces in size. Whenever it contracts, the slit of the superficial ring, the slit reduces. Somehow all these mechanisms are there mentioned in the book, but there are no diagrams to explain it. So the superficial ring is like this, slit formed by the external oblique. So whenever external oblique contracts, this slit is reduced. Okay, so slit wall mechanism of external oblique. This obliquity of the canal itself, which prevents the herniation, which prevents the herniation, because it is oblique. So whenever there is rise in the intra-abdominal pressure, the anterior and posterior walls of the canal get approximated, and this is called as flap wall mechanism. Flap wall mechanism. Okay, flap wall mechanism. So flap wall mechanism caused by the obliquity of the canal, shutter mechanism caused by the internal oblique, wall mechanism caused by the cremaster, and slit wall mechanism caused by the external oblique. Caused by the external oblique. So these are the various mechanisms. These are the various mechanisms for prevention of the inguinal hernia. Of course, the hormones and all those other factors are there. Okay. Now, let us move on to the actual topic of the day, that is inguinal hernia. As we had talked about this last time, that inguinal hernia, the inguinal hernia, it is of two types. It is of two types: the direct inguinal hernia and the indirect inguinal hernia. Now, inside the inguinal canal. Now, suppose this is the rectus abdominis muscle. And this is the rectus abdominis muscle. Because there are two recti, the rectus abdominis muscle, and here is the inguinal ligament. This is the inguinal ligament. Okay. The inferior epigastric artery. The inferior epigastric artery goes like this. So this is inferior epigastric artery. This is the inferior epigastric artery. And this triangle which is there, the inguinal canal is running like this. Inguinal canal is, the canal is running like this. So here, this part, this triangle is called as Hasselbalch's triangle. This triangle is called as Hasselbalch's triangle. Okay, Hasselbalch's triangle. And it is through this Hasselbalch's triangle that abdominal structures go into the inguinal canal, and this type of hernia is called as direct hernia. Now this Hasselbalch's triangle is divided by a structure which is there inside the Hasselbalch's triangle, and structure that structure is the obliterated umbilical artery. That structure is obliterated umbilical artery. Obliterated umbilical artery. Okay. So that divides it into medial and lateral portions. So again, I talk about the boundaries of the Hasselbalch's triangle. The Hasselbalch's triangle is medially, the boundaries formed medially by the lateral border of the rectus abdominis muscle, inferiorly by the inguinal ligament, by the inguinal ligament, by the inguinal ligament, laterally by the inferior epigastric artery, laterally by the inferior epigastric artery. And there is the obliterated umbilical artery which is running in between, which divides the Hasselbalch's triangle into medial and lateral part. So hernia coming from here is called as medial direct hernia, and hernia coming from here, from the lateral portion, lateral to the obliterated umbilical artery, is called as lateral direct hernia. That means, and whenever the hernia comes from the deep ring to superficial ring, that hernia is called as the indirect hernia. So whenever it comes from Hasselbalch's triangle, it is called as direct. Whenever it comes from the deep to superficial ring, it is called as indirect hernia. It is called as indirect hernia. I'm just trying to focus this. Don't worry. Okay. So inguinal hernia is of mainly two types, indirect and direct. Indirect comes from deep ring to superficial ring. From deep ring to superficial ring. Direct comes from Hasselbalch's triangle. Direct comes from Hasselbalch's triangle to the superficial ring. Indirect is mostly congenital. Mostly congenital. Direct is acquired. Direct is acquired. Direct is more common, and direct is of two types: the medial direct and lateral direct hernia. Middle direct and lateral direct hernia. Congenital, I had told you last time that this is the peritoneal cavity. This peritoneal cavity turns into processus vaginalis, which goes into the scrotum. And here is the testis, and this is the scrotum. So this gets cut off after birth. This gets cut off, and if it doesn't get cut off, then there is a continuation of the abdominal cavity right up to the testis, and this is called as a direct hernia, which comes from the deep ring to superficial ring. It's congenital because of continuation of the peritoneal cavity with the processus vaginalis. Now, in your textbook, you may now let us talk about one more thing. Let us talk about one more thing, and that is the types, the the type of indirect hernia. The types of indirect hernia. Okay, one is congenital vaginal hernia. Congenital vaginal hernia. So here what has happened is this is the peritoneal cavity and this is the processus vaginalis. Okay, it can be going to the scrotum or labia majora or wherever, and this has remained patent, so the abdominal contents go right down. In case of males, right down up to the scrotum. This is a congenital vaginal hernia. Okay. Then the second is congenital funicular hernia. Congenital funicular hernia. Now, what happens in congenital funicular hernia? That it is there in the hernia is there with respect to the spermatic cord, but does not communicate with the tunica vaginalis. That means it will be like this. It will be going into the scrotum, but the tunica vaginalis, which is going to cover the testis, has separated. Okay, has separated. So it goes from deep ring to superficial ring into the scrotum, but the hernia is separate. The hernia is separate. Hernia is separate from the testis. Here, the hernia almost goes and surrounds the testis because the peritoneal cavity is continuous with the tunica vaginalis, because tunica vaginalis is formed by the processus vaginalis, and that continuation is still there. Okay, so this goes into the scrotum, and but doesn't it goes into the scrotum but doesn't communicate with the tunica vaginalis. And third variety of indirect hernia is the bubonocele. Now, bubonocele is where, you know, this is restricted to inguinal canal itself. That means this is the peritoneal cavity, This is the processus vaginalis, and this is the deep ring. This is peritoneal cavity. This is the processus vaginalis. This is the deep ring, and this is the superficial. So that means this is already cut off from the scrotum. Scrotum, there is processus vaginalis forming the tunica vaginalis for the testes. So this is processus vaginalis, and this is the testis. So in bubonocele, what happens? It remains restricted. The hernia remains restricted to the inguinal canal. Congenital funicular hernia, it passes through the inguinal canal, goes to the scrotum, but it does not communicate with tunica vagina. Congenital vaginal hernia passes through the deep ring, through the superficial ring into the testes and communicates with tunica vaginalis. So these are the types of indirect hernia. Now the last component that is the coverings. That is the coverings of the inguinal hernia. Coverings of the inguinal hernia. So in case of the indirect hernia, will be coming from the deep ring to the superficial ring, right? In case of indirect hernia, the coverings will be from inside outwards, because there will be extraperitoneal connective tissue, then there will be internal spermatic fascia, right? Internal spermatic fascia, cremasteric fascia. What we had drawn last time, if you remember the layers, cremasteric fascia and external spermatic fascia, and the skin. Most outside will be skin. So if you remember how we had drawn the coverings, this is fascia transversalis. This fascia transversalis gives internal spermatic fascia. Internal oblique transversus abdominis give cremasteric fascia, external oblique. So these will be the coverings. There will be extraperitoneal connective tissue, then internal spermatic fascia, cremasteric fascia, external spermatic fascia, and skin. Now, in case of the indirect hernia, the coverings will be extraperitoneal connective tissue, internal spermatic fascia, cremasteric fascia, external spermatic fascia. This will be the normal, regular coverings, even which the spermatic cord has, except for the external extraperitoneal connective tissue, except for the extraperitoneal connective tissue. Now the second is the lateral direct hernia. Now, in case of lateral direct hernia, one thing you have to remember, it is coming from the fascia transversalis, but it is not coming from the deep ring. Therefore, in case of direct hernia, there will be no internal spermatic fascia. This is the point you have to remember, because it is not coming from the deep ring. Whatever passes through the deep ring, fascia transversalis gives an internal spermatic fascia for those structures. In case of direct hernias, they don't come from deep ring, they come from the Hasselbalch triangle. So there, instead of internal spermatic fascia, there will be the fascia transversalis. So let's write down the layers. So there will be extra peritoneal connective tissue, fascia transversalis. Then there will be the cremasteric fascia. Then as it goes out of the superficial ring, it passes from Hasselbalch triangle to the superficial ring. There will be external spermatic fascia, and then there will be skin. Now let us see the layers for the medial direct hernia. What are the layers? What are the layers for the medial direct hernia? It will be almost the same. Extraperitoneal connective tissue, fascia transversalis, fascia transversalis, and then instead of cremasteric fascia, now here we have seen that the posterior wall, in the medial 1/3 inguinal canal. When we discuss the posterior wall, we said posterior wall in the medial 1/3 is formed by the conjoint tendon, and therefore here now we are talking about the medial part, so there will be conjoint tendon. There will be conjoint tendon, and then there will be external spermatic fascia, and then there will be skin. Not so important from first MBBS part of view, but in your third MBBS, you have to remember these layers. Okay, so I have told you the technique. Here you have to just remember the layers of the spermatic cord in case of indirect hernia. Those will be the same layers for the hernia, except for extraperitoneal connective tissue. And then there will be internal spermatic, cremasteric, external spermatic fascia, and skin. In case of direct hernia, because it doesn't come from the deep ring, there will be no internal spermatic fascia. Instead, there will be fascia transversalis directly. It's the fascia transversalis itself gives internal spermatic fascia, but here it will be the fascia transversalis directly, then cremasteric fascia, external spermatic fascia, and skin in case of lateral direct. In case of medial direct, again extraperitoneal connective tissue, fascia transversalis, and instead of cremasteric fascia, here will be the conjoint tendon itself, because the posterior wall in the medial 2/3 of the inguinal canal is formed by conjoint tendon, external spermatic fascia, and skin. What are the causes for this hernia? One is strain. Strain can be in form of cough, it can be in form of constipation, it can be form of enlarged prostate. Okay, that will be the cause. One is strain. Another will be the weakness in the abdominal muscles, weakness of abdominal muscles. So what is this weakness of abdominal muscles? So if the patient has undergone appendectomy surgery, so some of the nerves supplying these muscles, the internal oblique and all, they are cut. So now internal oblique become weak, and internal oblique is responsible for the shutter mechanism. It approximates the anterior wall roof and the posterior wall. And all other muscles like external oblique, it is responsible for the slit wall mechanism. So when all these muscles, they become weak, when their nerve supply is cut during abdominal operations like appendectomy and any other operation, so there is weakness of abdominal muscles. So that will cause the weakness in the mechanisms that prevent the hernia. And therefore a person can get hernia. Multiple other causes you will study in your second MBBS and third MBBS. What is the treatment? What is the treatment? Treatment for hernia is of course surgery. There can be a complication that hernia is normally reducible. It can be pushed back, but then sometimes it may not be able to push back, and can be a strangulation of the hernia. All such complications happen. So therefore, a surgery has to be done. Prevention of hernia, yes. Whenever we are doing strenuous exercises in the gym, we have to see that we wear proper waist belt, which is covering the deep and the superficial ring, so that there is no herniation. Okay, so therefore you must have seen in the gym people wear a very strong waist belt. And surgery is the hernioplasty, and many other things like we put a mesh on the Hasselbalch strangle and strengthen it. All such things are there. You can just make a mention of this, not expected from you, but therefore I have just written 3-4 lines regarding this, and and that's all about the inguinal hernia.